I thought you were going to say you juggle.
I do juggle. I ride a unicycle. I know a few magic tricks. Very good at dad jokes. I'm not a dad, which makes it kind of creepy, but I've got skills.
I love it. More than just the financial advice. This is Admissible. I'm Natalie Blazer, Dean of Admissions at UVA Law. It's the last day of January as we're recording, which means we are heading into scholarship season. So I thought it would be great to check in with you all about what that means and what you can expect if you're applying to law schools in this cycle. So back in the very first season of Admissible, which was the fall of 2022, I had our then Assistant Dean for Financial Aid, Jennifer Holvey, on the show to talk kind of broadly about paying for law school, how to view your legal education as an investment in yourself. If you haven't listened to that episode, that's season 1, episode 4. I think it's a good starting point if you're really wanting to know about the bigger picture of paying for law school. Certainly nothing major has changed from the advice we gave 3 years ago on that. But today's show is going to be a lot more specific in that we're going to focus our discussion on merit scholarships and how they might play into your law school decision-making process. So, joining me here today for that discussion is UVA Law's Assistant Dean for Financial Aid, Education and Planning, Matt Wakeman. Dean Wakeman joined us in July 2023 from Rice University in Houston, Texas, where he served as Director of Student Financial Services for the Jones Graduate School of Business. In that role, he oversaw all aspects of the school's administration of financial aid, including federal Title IV funding, private student loans, veterans benefits, third-party payments, and scholarships. Dean Wakeman began his career in higher education in 2003 and has worked as the Director of Financial Aid for the New School of Architecture and Design, Southwestern Law School, and as Corporate Director of Financial Aid for Concord Career Colleges, Inc. A native of Oklahoma, Dean Wakeman graduated from Oklahoma State University in 1993. From here on out, I will refer to him as Matt, since we are colleagues and friends. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Long-time listener, first-time podcaster.
So I was going to say, this is your first time on the podcast. I'm super excited for everyone to hear from you. So before we get started, I just provided a little bit of background about you, but tell us something more about yourself, something people might not know.
I guess we talked about where I've worked, but I think more importantly to me maybe is why I do what I do. To go into higher education is definitely a calling that I've had over the past 20 years. Love working with students, of course. That's my favorite part of it. But I like being a resource. I like being able to help students navigate what can be a little tricky. Financial aid can be a little stressful. I understand all of that. I've been through that personally myself. And so that's really been a desire of mine over the years, was to make this process as seamless and easy as possible and provide students with a resource that they know from the day they first walk in the door, that they know who I am, they know what I do, they're comfortable coming in and talking to me and asking questions, because that's something that I didn't have when I was going through a large public university. If I would have known there was someone nice I could go talk to, I would have had tons of questions. Instead, I tried to figure it all out on my own. And I want to make that change. I want to make that different and easier for our students. And so I think that's what I would say is more important about where I've worked, is why I do what I do. And I know that you and all of our colleagues feel very much the same way.
That was lovely, Matt. I thought you were going to say you juggle.
I do juggle. I ride a unicycle. I know a few magic tricks.
I love it. More than just the financial advice. So, as I mentioned, we're here today to talk about scholarships. So, I want to start by saying every school approaches the scholarship process differently. And of course, we're going to be providing information and advice relating specifically to UVA's process. But having worked at 2 other top 14 law schools, I can tell you the guidance we're sharing today is going to be largely applicable no matter where you're considering attending.
Yeah. The meetings that I have with students on a daily basis, I understand that they're looking at multiple schools that have different processes. And I never like just telling them how we do it. I like to kind of give the general approach and tell them what they can think to ask at other schools.
Absolutely.
I think that giving them that information, part of the confusion is that each school does do things differently. And so if we can point out how it works and tell them what some of those differences are, they'll be more prepared to make better choices.
Absolutely. And that's because, whether they end up at UVA or not, we want them to be empowered with information. And I want to acknowledge at the outset that a lot of times the scholarship you get is not really within your control. A lot of it's actually not even in the scholarship committee's control. Every school has budgetary constraints, medians they're trying to hit, a ton of different stakeholders, any number of competing priorities. All of that is going to play into how much actual money any one admitted student is awarded. But, from the very beginning of launching this podcast, my real primary objective has just been to empower prospective law students with information. Having said all that, let's just start with some background information about how the scholarship process works. And I think before we do that, it might be good to define some terms first.
Great.
So when we say scholarship at UVA, what we're really talking about is a merit scholarship. That means, we are taking into account the same things that we take into account when we're admitting someone. There are law schools out there that award need-based scholarships, which I really more refer to as grants. Those are based on your personal financial information. Some schools award only need-based aid, some only award merit, and I think a lot award a combination of both.
That's right. And I think that's part of where this gets confusing. Some schools may not even tell you if their scholarships are more need-based or merit-based or the combination. We come right out and say that our primary focus is on merit scholarships.
Yeah, very good point.
And these are conversations that I have every day in students coming to me saying they're confused. They're not confused about the information that we've provided. They're confused that that information doesn't necessarily match what they're hearing from other schools that they're looking at. So I think it's great to make that distinction between the different types of scholarships.
Well, and I think it's also important to point out the way that undergraduate scholarships work a lot of times is need-based. And so people kind of expect that coming into the law school space.
That's right.
And as I mentioned, a couple schools do need-based, but the vast majority, it's not like paying for your undergraduate education. This is a graduate degree, and it just works really differently.
That's right. Yeah, I think that difference between undergraduate aid and graduate aid comes up a lot when they think about undergraduate or hear the term grants. A lot of times they're thinking of federal grants like the Pell Grant, not necessarily like a need-based grant / scholarship, which is what we're talking about at the law school level.
Right. So before we jump into scholarships, I think it is important to point out the way that the vast majority of law students are funding their education, which is through loans. I just want to distinguish loans from what we're talking about today. So Matt, can you just kind of explain how your office does the whole loan process, what information you need, how you package them, and so on?
I think that's a great place to start thinking about loans, because that really is going to be the most common way that students are paying for school. It might not be the full amount, but a lot of students are using student loans to help cover the cost of school. And as a graduate student, in order to be eligible for student loans, you have to complete the FAFSA. So that's really the only form that you need in order to be eligible for federal student loans. And part of doing the FAFSA as a graduate student is that you're not going to need your parents' information anymore. You're considered an independent student, and so you're not going to need to get their tax information. You don't need that to do the FAFSA. And again, the FAFSA is what you do for federal loans. There are two different types of federal loans that all students will be eligible for who fill out the FAFSA, and that's the federal unsubsidized loan and the federal Grad Plus loan. And the combination of those two loans are going to be what you use to cover the cost of school. And again, neither one of those loans are based on need. You have to do the FAFSA, but the answers that you put on the FAFSA don't determine if you'll be eligible for those loans. You could put that you made $0 or $1 billion, and you're still going to be eligible for those two loans. And that's what it means to say that they're not need-based. They're not based on your income when you fill out the FAFSA.
And does that also mean that when it comes to loans, your eligibility is going to be the same from school to school?
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. So when you do the FAFSA, you're going to fill out that information. You'll put as many schools that you want that information sent to. So you'll list out their school code. You can look up that school code by the school's name. You'll make that list, and then they will send that FAFSA information to each of those schools. And all schools, this isn't just a UVA thing, all schools are going to look at that FAFSA information to determine your federal loan eligibility. So that's exactly the same at every school.
Great. Okay. So that's super helpful. And like I said, that is going to apply to the vast majority of law students. And I would encourage anyone who has questions about that to talk to, our financial aid office. But let's move on to the topic of the day, which is merit scholarships. So I mentioned this before, but at UVA, we don't have any sort of separate application process for scholarships. Anyone who's admitted is automatically considered for a scholarship. And the criteria we're looking at is the exact same criteria we're looking at when we're admitting you in the first place. So how does the scholarship committee determine who gets a scholarship and in what amount? I mean, at the risk of using a very overused word in the admissions world, it really is a holistic process. We're taking into account every factor that we took into account when we admitted you in the first place. So that means your academic qualifications, your GPA, your LSAT, your involvement in your undergraduate institution, your work experience, how you present in an interview, your specific legal goals, your potential as a law student at UVA and future alum, so on and so forth. You get it. I also want to say some law schools out there use a grid. I've heard other law schools talk about this when I've been on a panel with them. So in other words, okay, hey, Matt, you're an admitted student. Your LSAT is X, your GPA is Y, your scholarship is Z.
Right.
Done, dusted, end of story. I want to make clear that if that's how we did it,
that doesn't take a scholarship committee to look at
right.
that.
We would all be in, Bora Bora right now if that's how we did it, because there would be nothing to do. Truthfully, there would be nothing to do. But just like you wouldn't want your admissions decision decided by some sort of formula or algorithm or grid, rest assured, when I say you want real people who are looking at every facet of who you are as a person. It's not always going to be, of course, the scholarship that you may want, but a lot of care and thought goes into it. From my perspective as the admissions dean, if you're admitted, that means we really like you and we really want you to come.
You did the hard part already.
Right. And so that's why scholarship season can be so agonizing, because we never want anyone to feel like we don't want them to come, because we do. But we can't give everyone a full tuition scholarship. We just can't. I also want to point out, before I got here, which was in 2020, UVA, I don't know when exactly this change was made, but it used to be that UVA gave out a very small number of full tuition scholarships, and the vast majority of admitted students actually got nothing. That was definitely true when I came. I did not get a scholarship.
How much did you receive?
I got zero scholarship, and I financed it all on loans, like we said, a lot of people do. But at some point before I arrived, the administration decided, what would help us maybe attract a better incoming class and really help more and more people is let's spread out the scholarship dollars. So while a small number of people are still going to get our full tuition scholarships, a very small percentage of the class will get full tuition. A lot of people are getting something. So something like 80% of the class is going to get some sort of scholarship. If that's $10,000 a year, $10,000 is
still a lot. That's a lot. When you said that, I'll take it.
I'll take totally. I would have taken that in a heartbeat. I really like that we do it this way now, because again, it helps us help as many people as we can. At the end of the day, still a good quarter of the class may be getting nothing. And, that's just sort of the way that it is.
It is. I do want to say, because I have this conversation a lot, is that to go to the point of we have already admitted you, and to me, you've already won the lottery at that point.
Yes.
The odds are so against you being admitted to these top schools. There are thousands of students, even just at UVA, who are not going to be admitted. You've been admitted. You've won.
Totally.
And now don't let your joy in that get diminished by not receiving as much of a scholarship as maybe you, not even that you feel like you deserve, but you think is the norm or the average or what you've seen someone say on Reddit that they received. Mm-hmm. It's just not the full story.
Right.
And so think about 5,000 people applying to UVA Law. You're now one of the 300 students that are going to come. Yes, it's important, and I would never downplay the money side of things, but that's such a great thing that you've already done. Mm-hmm. And so, again, live in that moment for a while before you start crunching the numbers on whether this scholarship is as good as you thought or had hoped.
And we're going to definitely talk about the value of the education and how one scholarship at one school is not equivalent to a scholarship at another school. Before we get into that, though, I mentioned it's scholarship season. We haven't actually awarded scholarships yet, but we are super in the thick of crunching those numbers and calculating awards. From a timing perspective, every school does it differently. When I was at Columbia, this was, 10 years ago now, I don't know if they've changed it, but you would find out your scholarship at the same time you were admitted.
Right.
Meaning if you were admitted in October, you already knew your scholarship. And so some schools do it that way. A lot of schools, UVA included, we're admitting on a rolling basis, but scholarships are coming out to everybody at the same time.
Right.
And that's the first week of March. So we really try our best to admit as many people as possible before those awards go out. That's why late January, early February, early March in admissions are, at least in my experience, the most the most stressful time of the year because there is so much going on. We're still admitting nearly half the class at this point, yet we're also trying to figure out, we have, I think at this point, maybe 5 weeks left until scholarships go out. So not a lot of time to get all that done. Okay, Matt. So your office in financial aid, this is where you guys are really coming in and doing the lion's share of the actual sort of packaging and awarding. So Talk about that. I know that, first of all, like before any awards go out, you're also communicating with admits.
That's right. So every day, my team and I right now are meeting with incoming students who don't even know how much of a scholarship or if they're receiving a scholarship, but they have questions, and that's what we're here to do already. So don't feel like you have to wait until you have all of the information before you start asking questions. We have a great website. I've put a lot of time and effort into making sure a lot of the main questions, all the deadlines, everything gets posted to the website. So that's always a great place to start, but you can always schedule an appointment with me specifically or anyone in my office to start going through some of these questions because a lot of them may not have anything to do with scholarships. And so we're more than willing and able to do that as early as now. But like you said, the actual award packages will go out on March 6th. So all admitted students who are receiving a scholarship and or who have completed their FAFSA will receive that information on March 6th. So we will send out a notification so that they're able to see all of the numbers at that point.
And even if you're somebody who doesn't get a scholarship, which again is a not insignificant portion of the class, you will know that on March 6th.
Yeah, that's right. So on March 6th, we go out with all scholarship awards that we are aware of up to that point. There could be last-minute or late applicants that we will do after March 6th, but the vast majority of those will go out on March 6th. So you'll find out specifically at that point if you received a scholarship. But also what to me is really important is do the FAFSA now, get that out of the way, and that way on March 6th we can also tell you your loan eligibility. So it's not just scholarship awards that go out on March 6th. It's everything that we know as long as you've done the FAFSA before our February 7th, which is the priority deadline to do the FAFSA. If you do that before, then you'll be able to get that whole picture on March 6th.
And you mentioned, right, like you've been meeting with people this whole cycle, and I just want to point out for people who don't know, if you're an admitted student, go on the financial aid website. You can book an appointment, a personalized like counseling appointment with Matt or with a member of his team. And that is just, I can tell you for sure, the time that we take with every individual is just not that common from a top law school. So I think that's just such a great resource to take advantage of. So you're answering questions all along. But then when the scholarships come out, I'm curious. That's when I know a lot of...
That's a busy day.
That's a busy day. And a lot of email traffic and phone traffic comes into your office and to my office. Are there like some most commonly asked questions once the packaging goes out?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that it will be really busy that day. I remember last year on March 6th, within seconds of sending out the email, the phone started ringing. So students are waiting around. I get it. It's an anxious time. They're waiting and then immediately call. And the top question, and I think this would be a great thing to point out now, is that as we've said throughout this whole podcast, my office isn't who is determining those scholarship amounts. People assume that we are because it's called the financial aid office, but what you want to understand is if you call us, I don't have anything to do with the amount that you were awarded. That's always the top. They want to ask about their scholarship amount. And I can tell them what their scholarship amount is that they're looking at on their screen. But if they want to discuss the scholarship amount, we're unprepared to do it at that time because that scholarship committee has made that decision, and it wasn't one of the people in my office.
Right.
The other question that we get from students is, what are the next steps? They've been waiting for months at that point to find out their scholarship amount. Now they have, or they know that they're not receiving a scholarship. Now they want to know what the next steps are. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I think this is a great time to have this discussion, is because there are things that you can do now. There's things that you can be thinking about now. There are steps that you can take before you know that information. And so, again, don't feel like you have to wait until March 6th to reach out and ask about the next steps. But all of that is also listed, again, on our website, and all of the notifications that we send out will tell you the next steps. If you want to accept the loans, what processes you need to do in order for those loans to become available. And so a lot of that information is available now, and there's not any need to wait until March 6th to call us.
And for anyone listening who's like, wow, this is a lot of information, there is going to be an email that goes out to all admitted students right around the time this episode comes out. You will be getting an email that kind of lays out everything, what to expect. And again, the financial aid office is always available for questions, but we do our best to kind of address what people are thinking about from the outset. So Matt, you mentioned, yes, of course, people are going to get their scholarship and they're going to want to talk about the amount of their merit award. You mentioned that a scholarship committee has already determined that amount, but of course, you and your team are doing a lot of individualized counseling. So somebody is going to say, well, I really want to come to UVA, but I got a higher scholarship at this other school. Or, well, the cost of living in Charlottesville is not the same as the cost of living in another city. And,
yes, it's less than most other cities.
It's less than pretty much
that is a
everywhere.
Good point. The cost of living is less in Charlottesville.
Yeah. And I always just say it's never apples to apples. You cannot compare one scholarship at UVA Law to...
That's right.
So how do you approach that with folks, because I know you're great at it, people always come out feeling much better about the whole process.
I think I have that same conversation that you just mentioned about trying to compare apples to apples and just how that isn't going to be possible. And I hate that because that would make this so much easier. But the reality of it is every school is so different, not just from the cost of the school to the scholarship amount, but more importantly, why those schools are at the top of your list.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to think and keep thinking about why UVA was their dream school to begin with, not just whether their scholarship was $5,000 less than it was at some other school, maybe. And again, I don't mean not to think about the money, but it's so much more of a decision than just the scholarship. And I think what I've seen students do over the years is focus so much on that because they feel like that's something that they can control. Mm-hmm. They can look at those numbers and now they can start trying to make these decisions. It's just not going to work out quite as easy as that because there are so many differences and more important things to decide on where you want to work, the things that you want to do, the community at the school that you're going to go to. Those are what would really make a difference in where you go to school, and then let us help you figure out the money side of it.
100%. I mean, getting $10,000 more a year at another school where you're not going to get a job, how that makes no financial sense, or where you're not going to be happy, or where you're not going to have the alumni network we have. And, again, it's agony for us on the scholarship committee because, again, we want you to come. And there are schools that just spend. And people tell us, well, I got a full ride here, or I got $50,000 here. I don't love to hear that, I want you to come here. And so that's why, I think what you just said is so important for people to remember. You need to focus on where you want to go and take advantage of the financial aid counseling that you can get because these are people who are going to explain to you how to make it work.
Yeah, I think that's the part that I speak to every day is, well, they see these numbers. They understand now that they're not going to get a scholarship or not as, not a huge scholarship. Now they want to figure out, well, now what? How am I going to pay for it? And there are a lot of options that I can talk about depending on the type of law you want to go into, where you're going to be practicing. It's not going to be as difficult as you may think in order to cover those costs. Just like you did, you would have loved a scholarship, but that certainly didn't prevent you from attending. It didn't prevent you from getting a great job and paying off those loans well before the repayment plan was finished. And so it's very doable. It's not just doable for people that go into big law. It's doable for people that go into public service. There's different paths to get to that. And that's what my office and what I do every day is help students identify those ways to make sure that they're covering their costs the appropriate way.
So what if somebody comes to us and says, and this, I know everybody's thinking it, so I might as well just get ahead of it.
I don't like where this is going.
As soon as people saw the title of the episode about scholarships, I'm sure this is what people want to know. I get this question a lot. Can I, quote unquote, negotiate my scholarship? First of all, use of that word immediately will set me off. I can't speak to others on the scholarship committee, but I don't love it. This is a top 5 law school. To Matt's point, you've been admitted. You've already hit the lottery. We really are not in the business of negotiating. And I hope, as I made clear earlier, so much thought and care goes into every single individual award. This is not arbitrary. So for someone to think, well, this is just something that I can change because I'm going to ask to change it, that's really unfortunately not how it works. At the same time, look, is it your prerogative to ask? Of course. I've heard people say, make them tell you no. That is your prerogative. And maybe there are schools out there that do negotiate. If you want to make us tell you no, feel free and be prepared to hear no.
Right.
Because the real truth is we do not increase scholarships because people ask.
Right. You didn't go out with a low number
That's
thinking
right.
that someone was going to negotiate.
That's
This
right.
isn't like, making the first offer on a car.
Right.
It's something
Right.
that, again, the committee has spent months gathering this information from the pool of applicants. But again, I've seen a lot of that kind of advice out there where, there are articles, there are, I hate to say it, Reddit postings about having students negotiate their awards. And it just doesn't really happen that often. There are probably cases where it has, but way more often than not, it doesn't work out that way. We will allow you to ask to have your scholarship reassessed if you have information that you can provide or want to provide. Sure, they'll take a look at it, but like Natalie said, be prepared to receive a no answer. And that doesn't mean to not do it, but you should already make your decision on where you want to go before you wait around to find out if your scholarship amount is going to be increased. Make the decision based on what you were already given.
Right. I tell people this all the time. You should really, when you get your award, whether it's zero or whether it's full tuition on March 6th, plan accordingly, right? That's going to be your scholarship from UVA Law. And I would really encourage people to zoom out a little bit. You are not, picture if, you were admitted, you hit the lottery, you're incredible. We have 300 other people who are also incredible, who we also want to give money to. So think of yourself as one among 300, really, really, really exceptional qualified people. We are on a strict budget. I think given all the time and care and effort that goes into this, I think every year we are very successful by awarding what we feel are competitive scholarship offers while staying in budget and getting the best class we can. Does that mean some people might go elsewhere based solely on the money? I think maybe. I don't know how many people we lose based solely on that. To me, that just says there's other factors that are going into that decision of why they want to go to another school.
For sure. I think that what students will find out is the similar schools, like true peer schools, you're not going to see these huge discrepancies in the scholarship awards typically that you receive from one school to the next. Of course, they will all be different, but there's not going to be this huge life-changing difference between two similar schools because all of these schools are looking at the same group of students. They're making these decisions based on the same students. They may have more or less scholarship dollars available than we do, but on average, all T14 schools, the average scholarship amount is within just a couple $1,000s of the other school.
That's such a great point.
If you look at all the top schools, you can go and find this information on every single one of their websites. It's on the ABA required information that schools post. You can see what their average scholarship amount is. Look at all of those schools, and you'll see that the average scholarship is within just a few $1,000s. A few $1,000s shouldn't make a decision on where you're going to go to school for your lifetime career. And so I think that that's the kind of information that may be misrepresented as students think that there are other schools that would have these majorly different scholarships. It's true. They're just not going to be at the same level they're not going to be peer schools. And so there are students who could, I would say all 300 of the students that we admit could go somewhere else and probably receive a full scholarship.
Absolutely.
And so that's what's important to think about is each school is going to be working with limited amount of money, looking at these potentially great students, and they're trying to make the smartest decision on how to spend those dollars so they can have the best possible class.
For sure. And one individual's goals might be to work in a small regional area where going to the local law school on a full ride makes sense for their goals.
Agreed.
And that's what your team is there for, to help sort of work through those priorities and goals. But I just hope that people understand that's not what the UVA law education is for. This is to unlock every single door available to you.
That's right. And I think that students who I've spoken to this year will be the first to say, we're not trying to sell you on coming to UVA law. We want you to make the best decision. So if there was a time where I would meet with a student who I feel like it would be better off, if their goals, which I'm finding out, I'm not just talking numbers with them, I'm finding out what they want to do, where they want to do it. If they did want to plan to move back to Nebraska and work in their family's law firm there, it doesn't make sense to go to UVA law. I'm not trying to talk anyone out of it, but at the same time, I'll tell them right up front, that's not going to be the decision that I would make depending on what my goals were. And so I think that that's important, is, listening to who's giving you information, whether or not they're trying to push you in one direction or not. I'm not at all. I want them to make the best decision for themselves.
Absolutely. Are there any misconceptions or myths or anything about paying for law school or paying down your debt after law school? Anything that you would want to clear up for people?
I do. I think going back to the very beginning of the conversation where we're talking about scholarships, I do want to say a little bit about the CSS profile. That's where a lot of confusion comes about between, well, what's the CSS profile? What's the FAFSA? Why doesn't UVA require the CSS profile? So what is the CSS profile? That's what schools are using to determine need-based scholarships. And the CSS profile is simply going to be a form that you do online, just like you're doing the FAFSA, but it's going to get really, really specific as far as the financial information that it's going to require from you as well as your parents. So that's where this kind of takes a turn for some students, is they did the FAFSA, they were an independent student, meaning they didn't need to provide their parents' information on the FAFSA. Now the CSS profile that they're being asked to complete for certain schools is saying that they need to provide parental information. And that's because they need a better way to figure out if a student is, quote unquote, needy or not. Because a lot of students, many of our students are not coming to law school with a long career where they're making a lot of money. Many of them are coming straight from undergrad. So if we were trying to look and determine a student's need based on the FAFSA, which again is only based on their income, every single student would look needy because they made zero income. And so how would a school determine whether or not they should award a need-based scholarship? It gets a lot more tricky, and that's where the CSS profile comes in. I know that was a lot, but kind of what that boils down to is it's optional at UVA law. We don't require that you complete the CSS profile. If you do, we will certainly review it, and that will be part of what the scholarship committee looks at. But again, the vast majority of our scholarships are merit-based. A lot of students that I've talked to recently see it on our website that it's not required and that we automatically review anyone for merit scholarships, and they're starting to get confused because the email that they just received from another school is telling them, do your CSS profile right away. And so that's something that I wanted to point out in this, is just why the schools are asking for it, why we're not requiring it, and letting you know that that information will still be applicable if you do it. But that's why some schools do that.
Right. That's super helpful. And I think it goes back to one school might have very specific instructions for what you need to do for them.
Right.
It always helps to clarify with another school, like, hey, do I need to do that? And so I think that's really useful for people to know.
Yeah. The main concept of it is the FAFSA is for loans, the CSS profile is for need-based scholarships. Depending on where you go to school, they may want you to do the CSS profile or not.
Right. And just to reiterate, at UVA, for merit scholarships, there is nothing you need to do.
Nothing.
Except get admitted.
Exactly.
Which is the hardest part.
That's the hard part. That's why we do it that way.
That's right.
You've jumped through that hoop.
Right.
We know we want you. We really want you to come. Now we can figure out how much, if any, we're able to offer you in a scholarship.
Right. So, Matt, just wrapping up here, you've already given such great advice to, about just paying for law school and how to think through these things. But is there anything maybe we didn't cover or touch on that you would want a prospective law student to know, whether they're just now going through the process of applying to schools, whether they're weighing where to go, or for their future selves a month from now when they have all these scholarship packages?
I'm picturing our audience out there as all students that we've already admitted, but there's going to be students out there who haven't even applied yet. Mm-hmm. And so what I want to say in general is the earlier they start thinking about this, the better. Don't wait until you have all of the answers before you start trying to put together a plan. I think it will be difficult to compare, but it's not difficult to start formulating a plan for your future on how you want to pay for school. And I think that in regards to the FAFSA, I would tell everyone just do the FAFSA. Whether you want student loans or not, that can change. You might as well do the FAFSA, get it out of the way. It's super easy now. It may take 10 minutes at the most, which is much different than it used to be in the past, but it's very simple now. Do the FAFSA. That way, when awards come out on March 6th, we'll be able to tell you the full picture. And at that point, now you'll know every kind of aid that you can receive from UVA. And I would say the other piece of advice that I would give is ask questions to the right people. My team and I, this is all we do. So all day, every day, that's why we're here, is to help students with these questions. And don't feel like you can't come to us at any point with these questions. I will have a Zoom meeting with a student and they will be so frazzled because they were trying to find all this information out on their own when they could have just scheduled an appointment. Like it takes, a minute. And all of us in my office have been in higher education. I have the least tenure with 20 plus years of experience. There's someone in my office that has 52 years of experience in financial
UVA
aid.
Law.
At UVA. She hasn't worked anywhere else. So she knows this stuff. So we can help you with that. That would be my advice, is find the right people to ask the questions to instead of relying on, Reddit. I love Reddit. It's very interesting, but don't go to Reddit and ask a question when you could ask the dean of financial aid a question. That's why I'm here. I'll give you the right answer that's applicable to you. So that's my advice is come to me, come to my office, sit down. I'll get to know you. I'll be here over the next few years. Kind of setting up those relationships now is going to make this really, really beneficial for you.
Since this episode comes out on February 7th, which is our priority deadline to file the FAFSA, I'm just going to put this out there. If somebody's listening to this and they're an admitted student to UVA and they say, oh no, it's February 7th, it's the priority deadline for the FAFSA. First of all, as you mentioned, it takes 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So they could still fill it out that day. Let's say they don't fill it out. Let's say they haven't even been admitted.
Yeah.
Because listen, we're going to be admitting people through the end of February.
That's right.
So what would you tell that person?
Yeah, that's great. And I saw that last year, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, because the priority deadline simply means that if we have your FAFSA by that date, then on March 6th, your award letter will show scholarships and loans at the same time. That's just to make it simple for you. Let's say you haven't even done the FAFSA. You don't even you forgot to do the FAFSA. You'll still find out if you received a scholarship on March 6th, and then you'll see there's no loans on it, and that will remind you, oh, I should have done the FAFSA. Right. Easy. Just do the FAFSA at that point. So
it's not that you're not going to get
anything.
Loans.
That's exactly right. So there is no deadline to do the FAFSA. I'm glad you brought that up. The priority deadline makes it sound more daunting than it is. do it by that date and you'll get all of the information together. But if you do it after that, you'll get the information a week later.
Right.
So we send out package awards every week. So nothing bad would happen if you didn't do the FAFSA by that priority deadline.
Absolutely. And by the way, every year we do admit a small handful of people, well, depending on the year, a small handful or a large handful after the first scholarship packaging date.
Yep.
That doesn't mean you aren't eligible for a scholarship. You are. We always reserve money for people that we're going to admit after that point. We just try to get people information earlier, to finish up our cycle in a timely manner. We do try to admit the vast majority of people. But if you haven't been admitted either by the time you're hearing this or by March 6th, that doesn't mean you're
That's
out
exactly
of
right.
the running.
Yeah. No issues whatsoever at that point. In theory, we could admit someone the day before school started. You could still be eligible for a scholarship at that point. You're still eligible to do the FAFSA at that point. So there is no deadline for when you need to do the FAFSA. And that's something that I meant, get it out of the way sooner the better. But if you don't do it or you want to hold off, there's no penalty for that whatsoever.
Great. Well, Matt, this has been...
Well, that was good, wasn't it? Wow.
Super helpful. This has been awesome. I learned a lot, and I thought that I knew all there was to know, but I think you made some really great points for people, and it was awesome having you here. So
thank you so much. I can't wait to do it again.
This has been Admissible with me, Dean Natalie Blazer at the University of Virginia School of Law. My guest today was Assistant Dean for Financial Aid, Education, and Planning, Matt Wakeman. The next episode of Admissible will be out soon. In the meantime, you can follow the show on Instagram at Admissible Podcast. And as a reminder, Admissible is now on YouTube. You can check out all new episodes there, along with some vintage content we're sharing to help guide you through this application season. Thanks so much for listening, and please remember to rate the show wherever you listen to podcasts.